of basketball. Now they've been playing in the bubble, but that doesn't mean you can't get the best in basketball coverage, especially if you're an Atlanta Hawks fans. This guy right here has a tremendous now audio, video, podcast. He's doing it all. Covers the Hawks. He got the best name in town, Hawksbeat. The man himself, E-Dub, is in the building. What's going on, sir?
My guy, Jonathan. How you doing, brother?
Hey, man, I'm good and happy to be alive and well. Praise the Lord, man. Hey, so it's been a minute since you've been on the show. Thank you. Take some time out. I know you're a busy, man. Got a lot going on. So let's get right to it. First of all, Hawks camp is open. Am I understanding, man? They got the summer camp and everything's on and popping right now, right?
Yeah, man. They actually started their own little mini bubble here in Atlanta, kind of an off-season training camp, if you will.
Okay.
It's been kind of weird because, like, NBA season is still going on. Like, we got the finals. COVID has really knocked everything that far off balance. But, yeah, the guys are getting in some work, so it's kind of a little light mini camp.
So good stuff here. The other thing I understand that they actually are going to let us have some real contact with the players as far as through Zoom. So we'll be able to actually talk to Coach Pierce. I know he's been on some of the other players. Have you been able to tap into any of those? And if so, what's been kind of the mood or the vibe as they start this kind of own summer bubble camp?
Yeah, so the Hawks have made the players available all this week. And we've talked to Trey, we've talked to John, we've talked to Clint, Coach, Travis, who else? Scalabissier. They had Kevin Herter was yesterday. So the vibe that we're getting is the guys are really just coming together, becoming a team, right? So they're working on a lot of camaraderie, and they're just really getting to know each other. A lot of them have talked about just being in the bubble and just getting to know each other off the court. And, they're not pushing them too hard, man. It's still off season. We still got a long way to go before the regular season gets here. So it's just kind of knocking the cobwebs off, getting them a little light run, and seeing what we have for next year.
How important is that for these guys to kind of do something like that? Again, we know the playoffs are going on. We'll talk about that in just a moment. But for them to kind of get back in the groove of playing, again, against your teammates, but basically playing some competitive basketball.
Yeah, it's real big. I mean, even Trey was like, the first day, of course, there's a lot of cobwebs. You're playing with guys you haven't played with in a while. Everybody's been doing their own individual thing. And I mean, you know how sports is. You don't just throw a team together and have all of the pieces working. It's not NBA 2K. So, I mean, this is the first time John and Clint have played together. This is the first time Trey and Clint and all of these different lineups have really played together. So this is just kind of getting a head start on everything and seeing hopefully what it will look like next year.
Speaking of Clint Capella, we know that he was injured through most of last year. Really never got a chance to see him on the court. Completely healthy now, almost there, 90%. What's the feedback on him?
So we talked to Clint, I think it was what is this? In COVID, my days run together. So, it was either earlier this week, I believe, and he's 100% ready to go, man. He's
okay.
no holdbacks. The coaching staff hasn't really pushed these guys a lot. Again, the NBA season is still going, so you don't want to run your guys into a ditch before they actually get going. You just kind of want to run them a little bit, get them a little lathered up, let them build a little off-court camaraderie, and kind of see what we got here. So from all intents and purposes, he's ready to go, and he hasn't had any setbacks.
Now, when you look at this edition of Clint Capella, a lot of people thinking, I'm not going to say a championship team, but certainly another key peg into making the Hawks a competitive team in the East and maybe one that can challenge for a playoff berth. Is that kind of overhyping the situation, or can he make that kind of impact on this team?
No, not at all. I mean, we talked to Kevin Herter yesterday, and someone posed that same question to him. He was like, "Look, man," he was like, "No disrespect to the Orlando Magic, but we feel like we are just as good as them, And they were kind of the benchmark, right? Because they're the eighth seed in the playoffs last year. And the talk around the Atlanta Hawks, the talk around training camp, from Lloyd Pierce on down, the goal is the playoffs. The expectation is the playoffs next year. Knock on wood, everyone stays healthy, but that is the expectation for next year. You have a good core in place, and I believe competitively they can be a playoff team, probably a lower tier, maybe 8 seed, 7 seed, maybe 6 seed in the East, but I think they're definitely capable of being that considering hoping everybody stays healthy.
Yeah, so when you look at this team, the other thing that everybody kind of speaks about is the Hawks getting tougher and getting a little bit sharper on defense. Again, we're circling back to Clint Capella. That's kind of what he was known for. How much is he going to rub off as far as his way of going about his business to affect this Hawks team, you think?
Well, you hope that it transfers over a little bit, right? Because
Right.
they brought him in because they know what they have on the defensive perimeter. They know that Trey and Kevin are defensive liabilities.
Liquid
There's no
soft,
ifs,
too.
ands, or buts about
Right.
it. Yeah, and
Liquid soft.
so what you're doing is you're not sending Trey or Kevin off anytime soon. So you go ahead and get a guy that can kind of help and make up for those deficiencies. So you hope that he's going to make John a better defender. You hope that he's going to make Cam a better defender. That's why you brought him here, mainly for his defense and for his rebounding. I think offensively is going to take care of itself. I still think that the Hawks need to add a shooter or two. I think they need to add a defensive specialist, like a defensive guy, to go along with a Clint Capella. We talk about the glory days, right? Especially if you're a Hawks fan, we talk about the 60-win team, and you and I have had conversations on conversations about this. That team was at its best when they were good defensively.
Right.
Tabo Stuffalosha, Damari Carroll, Al Horford, those guys were defensive dogs. And there's no, you don't take shortcuts to that. You have to be, and you have to have a presence defensively, as we're seeing with the Miami Heat.
Well, one of the things that we look when we go to a break and we're going to bring you back on. One of the things that when the Hawks were at their best is what they did to kind of neutralize the fact that they weren't the biggest team is they have very active hands. And we're going to talk to you a little bit about that. You listen to the Real Talk Sports Show. We're coming back to social media, guys, so don't go anywhere. We're going to answer your comments and questions in just a moment. Keep it locked right here for more because we'll be right back in just a moment.
This is OJ Howard with Real Talk Sports.
What's up, guys? This is Tim Tebow. You're listening to Real Talk Sports.
This is Charles Woodson. Let me grab the mic. You ready? This is Charles Woodson with Real Talk Sports. Hey, it's your boy JB Smooth with Real Talk Sports.
We appreciate those gentlemen for stopping by and joining us here. That everybody asked me, okay, where did you see all those guys at? Most of that was at the Blue Carpet event when the Mercedes-Benz, I should say the stadium at Mercedes-Benz hosted the College Football Championship. We were on the ESPN Blue Carpet, and we had a great chance to meet up with a lot of those guys, and so we're very thankful for that. Let's go to social media and see what is cooking there on social media, see if we have any comments. And, yep, we got a comment here from a pastor, Pastor Daniel Fagan, has a wonderful church here in Clayton County, Fresh Bread Ministries. This is his question. They said the Hawks need a defensive-minded guard and outside shooter. So it looks like, man, he's right on with you, bro. It's like, did you feed him that? Did you feed him that line, bro? What happened there?
No, I didn't feed him that line, man. But shout out to the pastor, man. Shout out to him. Hey, man, and while we're talking about guards, one big deficiency that we had last year with the Hawks was the inability to get Trae Young any rest.
Right.
I am somewhat of a metrics guy. I think metrics have their place. However, one thing we did see last year was when Trae went out of the game, oh my gosh, the numbers were outstanding. A free agent guy that I've been talking about a lot who's going to be available this summer is DJ Augustine. I think he will be a good veteran presence.
Former Texas Longhorn.
Yeah. So you can run him with Trae. You can run him. He can run the show by himself. I think he would be a great addition to this Hawks team. And the Hawks got they got a lot of money, brother. They got a lot of money. I'm thinking about going down there and seeing if I can get me a little 10-day or something, man.
Hey, man, they definitely have stockpiled money and stockpiled draft picks and have a lot of great young talent. Speaking of young talent, we keep talking about the whole defensive thing here. Are we neglecting our own homegrown Cam Reddish, who seemed like he came on strong defensively in the second half of last year?
Nah, Cam's going to get his due. I think that Lloyd was bringing him along slowly. We got to remember, man, for all intents and purposes, this was a college sophomore last year.
And that's
I think a lot was heaped on him because of the roster. He was forced to start in some games where he just wasn't ready. And there's no shame to him not being ready because it's tough being a rookie in this league. But I mean, we did see the gains toward the end of last year. We're looking for a good, solid year for him this year. The expectations are up there, man. So I like the kid. He's very soft-spoken, very talented. Though he could be a really big player for them this year for what they want to do.
No doubt. And again, more echoes and kudos from Pastor Fagan. He's saying, yeah, DJ Augustine would be a good fit. Yeah, man. See, Augustine, man, I watched him in the NCAAs with the Longhorns. The guy was a grinder. He's been a grinder since he's been in the league. Can he shoot? Absolutely. But he's like kind of old school. Gets right in your face, not afraid to come right at you. And the same thing when he has the ball, a guy that will kind of push the ball directly at the goal. So, yeah, he'd be a good fit. Whether Hawks will pick him up or not, who knows? But certainly some great potential there. All right, let's shift now to what's happening in the bubble. NBA, we're down to 2.
Yes, sir.
Heat versus Lakers. Who do you like in that matchup and why?
Man, to be completely honest with you, John, and you know how I do. I don't just come out and say A or B. I have to overanalyze things, and I have to look at situations. And I tell folks all the time, man, like I'm not new to this, man. Like I've been doing this for a while. And so I look at this and I still, if you put a gun to my head and I got to make a decision right now, I would say Lakers in 7. However, I believe people aren't giving the Miami Heat enough respect, right? Because and I'm gonna lay out my thing because I was actually doing notes, man, before. You know how I take copious notes.
Yes, you do. I was
breaking down the finals. You look at it from a coaching standpoint. I think the Miami Heat have the better coach. I think Spoelstra is a better coach than Vogel. I think they're a better defensive team. I think they have better shooters because if you look at the totality of how we're looking at things, and we're trying to look at this thing objectively, not just, LeBron's here, we got to go with them. I'm trying to look at it objectively. LeBron is a type of player, and this is not a shot on LeBron. He is a type of player that needs the whole cog to be working for everything to come out successful. There's nothing wrong with that. Jordan was like that. Here's the difference. When Jordan was in the finals, he can count on John Paxson. He could count Steve Kerr. He knew Horace Grant was going to be at the top of the key. He knew Scottie was going to be ready. Everybody like that. With LeBron, how much faith do you have in Danny Green? How much faith do you have in Caldwell Pope? So if you look at Caldwell Pope and Danny Green knocking down shots versus Tyler Hero and all those guys in Miami, now it starts to look a little bit different now, right? And so I say my heart of hearts, I'm always going to lean on LeBron because he's that dog. I'm always going to give him the credit, and I'm always going to pick them. And right now I have LA in 7, and that may change. But I think we need to really give Miami some credit here.
Well, again, Pastor Fagan, we done got him fired up. He's saying go Lakers. But he is admitting, though, that the Heat are a complete all-around team. And one thing that the Heat have, which you can never really count out, is that when you got an alpha dog, that's a dirty dog. Now, I say dirty, not don't get me wrong. I'm not talking about dirty in terms of, doing something illegal or any type of improper play. But I'm saying anytime you have a guy in an interview with a beautiful young woman, I watched Jimmy Butler was interviewed with one of the rising stars, Taylor Rooks. She was on the Sports Network in New York, and now she's on and popping, doing all kinds of stuff across the nation. So
does an amazing job.
Right. So what she asked Jimmy the question. Jimmy said, "Look, let me explain something to you." He said, "I don't care if anybody likes me." He said, "Really, it's just I'm not here for that." He said, "I'm not." He said, "I know a lot of people don't like me." He said, "They'll be all right." He said, "I'll get over it." He said,
"I love it.
I'm trying to win." And see that's and this as a aside, that's what's wrong really here in Atlanta.
I love it.
Because here in Atlanta, I tell people we are still suffering from the effects of basically 2 guys, David Justice and Michael Vick. Those 2 guys, I don't want to make this a racial thing, but those 2 guys basically were let me see if I can phrase this right. They was brothers. They was black men. And
Yeah.
so when I say that to say this, not in a derogatory term or not to, again, creating kind of racial stripe. What I meant by that is they had a swagger to them that you couldn't put that fire out. I mean, David Justin basically tell you, I'm going to take your heart out here, man, because when I get up here, at some point, you got to throw me a pitch I'm going to hit. And
Yeah.
I'm gonna get that clutch hit. Michael Vick was a guy that told you, I got a video game named after me called the Michael Vick Experience. I have a whole thing here. I put mirror. Think about this. Mike in his prime got a pair of Nike cleats that had mirrors on the sole. When they asked him why, he said so that people could see them missing him on the tackles. Come on.
Hey man, I love Jimmy Butler. I'm the hugest Jimmy Butler fan, and I don't think that Miami is more talented, but I think they match up really good. Who
Right.
traditionally has given LeBron problems over the years? Andre Iguodala, he's on that squad. Jimmy Butler, we know that he plays LeBron hard. And I'm not saying LeBron's going to have a bad series, but I'm
Right.
saying we need to. And a lot of these prognosticators and a lot of these people on the ESPNs, they're just going to say, "Oh, Lakers winning 4, 5, and 6 or whatever," because that's the easy thing. But if you really look at it, man, Miami has more than a puncher's chance to win this finals.
Oh, there's no doubt, man. I mean, they are a team. Like I say again, when you have a nasty alpha dog like Jimmy Butler, a guy who basically is fearless, then you always have that shot. Let's go back to social media. Like I say again, we got the pass all fired up. I can't imagine what he's going to do Wednesday night in his service. Anyway, yeah. So he said a Heat are a deep team, which is true, and he points out what we're talking about, that Miami plays mad. They play with a chip on their shoulder. Anytime you have teams or players playing with a chip on their shoulder, you never know what they're going to bring to the table. And last but not least, he agrees with me saying that Atlanta ain't nasty enough. And again,
they need a dog, man. You and I have been saying this for years. They need a dog. Just bring one dog in the building.
Look, I'm going all the way back to when the previous incarnation, when they had Coach Woodson here. And a lot of people didn't like him because he was a hard-nosed guy. I think to some degree he overcooked the hard-nosed defense. I don't want to play young people before the time, because to me he really kind of stunted Jeff Teague's game, because Teague, a lot of people don't remember, but Teague came out of, I think I want to say was it Wake Forest?
Wake Forest. I was covering the team that time.
Right. So, you know, if you look at the early highlights of him coming out of Wake Forest, this is a guy that was dunking the ball. This is a guy that was taking people to the hole. This was a guy that had an aggressive play. And I think that really Woodson's constant kind of leaning on him about the defense, not playing him at all, really, to me, I don't think he ever really became the player he could have been here in Atlanta. But on that Woodson staff, he had a guy by the name of Gar Hurd. And Gar Hurd was a tough-nosed defensive player back in the 70s and 80s. And he said to me, he said, listen, the problem is with this team, and I heard it again from Kevin Willis, who played in the 90s, and even from Dominique, off the record, all these guys, right, they all said the same thing. The team doesn't have the and they don't like to get dirty. They don't like to bang it up in the boards. And because of that, they don't play that type of in-your-face defense. And when you don't do that, it's hard for you, especially playing in the Eastern Division, to consistently win, because the East Coast basketball is different.
Yeah.
A little different, a little bit more physical. It requires a lot more half-court play. And the Hawks, even in their 60-win season, now, again, you can't discount injuries, but eventually that was their undoing, because they just could not play that type of game, which, as you know, you got to play that in the playoffs.
Yeah, and it was more – you and I know the subtle nuances of the game, you know, because we look at the game differently from the average fan. And it was never more evident than last year when Trae Young tried to nutmeg Trevor Ariza. Trevor Ariza put Trae on his back.
Right.
Not one player from the Atlanta Hawks put Trevor into the stands, and that's what they should have done. Let me use the correct English. That's what should have happened. You don't let nobody put hands on your star player like that. You don't do that, man. You don't do that. And again, you just need a dog, man. You need a dog that's gonna come in there and say, I don't care if you throw me out the game. What you're not gonna do is put your hands on my star player.
Look, now I know everybody's going to be thinking to themselves, now listen to the preacher. He had another preacher on. They all talking rough, being nasty, advocating violence. Here's what helped me out, okay? So I had the great privilege to interview, he came into the studio, one of the legendary NFL enforcers, one of the great power forwards, guy oftentimes doesn't get his due, played for years with the Milwaukee Bucks, later played with San Antonio Spurs, Terry Cummings.
Okay, yeah.
And now keep in mind, in his last probably 5 to 10 years of his career, he was an ordained minister. And matter of fact, he pastors here in Decatur. And I asked him, I said, I'm just going to ask you, brother to brother, preacher to preacher, how did you go about your business? And he said, I had no problem at all. He said, because I had a job to do. And he said, my job was to make sure that players on both teams, but especially players on the other side, understood the rules of engagement. And if in fact those rules were broken, it was my job to make sure that they didn't get broken again. And I said, oh okay. So basically it's the same. The concept is he understood that, hey, there are times where you have to kind of make your presence felt. Okay, again, we're going back to social media. Pastor Fagan saying, yep, Tree Rollins, Kevin Willis, some of the other guys. You go all the way back even to the 70s, the late, great Dan Roundfield. All those guys, they would have, again, we're not, and please, folks, I know people watching this, I don't want you to flip out and trip and thinking that we're asking players to get involved in physical violence or altercation. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is that there has to be some level of physicality, some way to kind of, for lack of a better term, stake out your spot, your space. That has to be done. And that can only be done when you have somebody that's willing to do it. And the Hawks, up to this point, haven't been able to do it. But maybe Clint Capella might be that answer.
Yeah, and I think that when we talk about this, it's more of a mentality. It's more of a presence of how you carry yourself than it is anything else, And I just think that when you have that presence, there's a different respect that you carry from other teams, even when you only have one or two guys on that squad who's just the guy, And I think the Hawks got a lot of nice guys. They got a lot of guys that are very athletic. And I would just love to see a kind of an old, and I'll give you this one caveat to kind of to throw a bone to these new players. These new players, they have to play within the realm of today's game. Today's game isn't reffed like it was in the 90s and in the 80s. They don't let them get away with half the stuff. The fouls that they're called nowadays are just like, oh my gosh. And now, because of the malice in the palace, because of things, nobody wants anything to get out of control. So these players are growing up in a culture that will not allow them to be those guys in the 90s and in the 80s and back then. So we can't put it all on this new generational type of player because they're playing within the confines of what the NBA referees are allowing. And nowadays, the referees just don't allow for much of any of that stuff.
Not as much strong arm activity maybe as others. Yeah, I understand. And again, it's I've always told people, one thing I try to avoid, that I don't want to sound like the old man. When we were kids, we always had a guy in the barbershop. The guy was always mad. I don't care what the situation was, any topic. It was always better in his day. He was always mad. This generation was, whatever name you could say, soft, sorry, can't do it. So I don't want to be that guy. I definitely am not going to be that. But at the end of the day, for the Hawks to get to the next level, and as we discussed earlier, hopefully Clint Capella can bring some of that energy. They're going to have to get in the position where they play some defense, and also going to need to be able to control the boards, because this is a team that I think if they can get out and run, get out and hit and be able to take open shots in space, they can be a very dangerous team.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, taking us back to the Lakers and to the Miami Heat are a very physical team. And I think of physicality when you think of a guy like Bam Adebayo, who is very physical. Now, let's go back to when the Lakers played Houston. Do you remember that game one when your boy Tucker for Houston? He was strong arming Anthony Davis. And so it's going to be interesting to see how a guy who is much taller and much stronger than a Tucker deals with an Anthony Davis. Now, Anthony Davis is a tremendous talent, but one thing we know, he's made of paper mache. If it's not a rolled ankle, if it's not a pinky, he's always saying, like, there's always something with him. And I love AD, but I'm gonna call it like I see it. There's a lot of times that you come, you're like, oh man, he's hurt again. You know what I'm saying? So if you get a guy who has the physicality of a Tucker in Houston, and who's going to be coming at him much harder than Tucker was. Tucker just got worn down because he realized, look, AD's 6'10", and I can't do nothing with him. Right. That is going to be an interesting dynamic, the AD versus the Bam Adebayo matchup.
Well, I like the unibrow to handle his business. I think he sniffs that this is a chance for him to, become part of legend. Most people have told me there's going to be no asterisks next to the season. So if you're the NBA champ, you're the NBA champ. So I look forward to seeing the big stuff that he's going to do. And I think it's going to be a great one. Like I said, because I think that Jimmy Butler, I think that the Miami coach, he's been here, done that. So I think that those two guys are going to make sure that this team does not fold. And even the old man, oh my gosh, he's been with the Heat his whole entire life. They were showing him
Who has one? UD?
Yeah, 40 years old. Like, look, we're going to get this. So it's going to be very, very exciting to see. Well, speaking of get this, we want people to get how they can find out more about you, your blog, social media, and so forth. So once again, as we always do, the platform is yours.
Hey, man, you guys know how to find me, man. I'm all over the place. Let's see. I'm at Hawksbeat on Twitter. The website, the hub is thehawksbeat.com. I'm also doing a NFL podcast on another platform. It's called The Opening Drive. You can get that at the Game Time Radio Network, which we're doing the NFL too. So I'm all over the place, man. You can find me at, again, Hawksbeat on Twitter and GTR Radio 1100 on Twitter. We got Facebook pages, whatever platform that you're on, just search Hawksbeat and Game Time Radio Network, man, and you'll find me, man. You know I'm always broadcasting. I love to do it. I love chopping it up with you, my brother. I miss covering games with you, man. And we used to have some great times, man. I enjoy the invite. Keep doing your thing, my brother, man. It's been awesome.
Look, man, we're always going to have you back on here to chop it up about the Hawks and, just so many things that are going on in the world of basketball as well. Well, we got to get one more in. I know you done paid Pastor Fagan, so I'm going to go ahead and put him on here one more time. He said, yep, Udonis Haslem is a beast, an absolute beast. And
respect,
again, we like I said, man, it should be very, very interesting watching the Hawks next year. Hopefully and prayerfully we'll be fully out of the COVID situation we're in now, and we'll be able to see some basketball. Because I think this young team, if they can get some wind underneath their sails, get this crowd behind them, I think we might have something, bro.
Yeah, definitely, man. What we tapped into last year toward the end of the season, where guys started coming back. John came back off his suspension. We saw what we think Trae Young can be. Right. There's still a lot of growing and a lot of maturing that he has to do, that him and John have to do. And look, man, you got a whole new piece with Clint Capella. Nobody knows what that's going to look like. This isn't NBA 2K. You can't just plug them in. Coach Pierce doesn't know what it looks like. John doesn't know what it looks like. Nobody knows what it looks like. So we're going to have to see how that meshes and how that becomes part of the stew. And I'm a believer of Coach Pierce. I like Coach Pierce. I think he's straight up. I like the management of the Hawks, and it's been a joy covering the Hawks, and this will be year 6 for me. So it's been a pleasure covering them, and I look forward to another good season next year.
Well, I do too, man. I look forward again, like I said, getting together in person, doing some late game recaps, and just chopping up as we always do. Well, listen, we appreciate you, E, and until the next time, man. God bless, and we'll have you back again real soon.
More brother, peace.
There is, guys. That's E-Dub from the Hawksbeat, and we appreciate him for joining us here this evening on the Real Talk Sports Show. We're going to shift gears. It's football time in the state of Georgia, and of course, when we talk football, we do college, but man, we got to talk about them Falcons. So if y'all are ready, we're going to take a quick little break, and then we'll be back with more of the Real Talk Sports Show, broadcasting on every platform we can: YouTube, Facebook, Periscope, which is Twitter TV, and WIGO 1570, Atlanta's Incredible Radio. We'll be right back.